Welcome back! We're still talking about Goethe's Faust, and today we're looking at the final scenes of Part 1, the end of the Gretchen tragedy. So in the last episode, we looked at the crazy Walpurgis night sequence, in which Faust has been away from Gretchen for about a year, and he's having this wild witch party. He's really forgotten about her until in one moment he sees a vision that reminds him of her and foreshadows her plight. The next scene, dreary day, a field, picks up in the morning after the Walpurgis Nights party, and somehow Faust has realized that Gretchen is in deep trouble at this point. It wasn't just a vision, it wasn't just his imagination, but Gretchen really is in dire circumstances. And somehow Faust has gotten actually the whole story, which has made him very angry. However, Goethe doesn't bother to tell us the story. He just jumps into Faust yelling angrily. It's a little bit confusing until we get to the dungeon scene and actually realize what happened. Gretchen has been arrested, yes, and she is set to be executed, yes, but he doesn't directly tell us until he drops it in hints in the dungeon scene. Although Faust's speeches make a whole lot more sense here if you know what's going on. The fact is, Gretchen had her child and then drowned it. This was a really unfortunate problem that was really common in Goethe's day. Unwed mothers didn't know what to do with their children, and sometimes these unwed mothers would be thrown out in the street. They wouldn't be given any work, they wouldn't be given a home, their families would kick them out, and here Gretchen is with no one to turn to, and she's got this child, and she's watching it starve to death. Ultimately, she drowns it, which we're not entirely sure why she drowned her child, but it may be either that she lost her mind and did it, or that she killed it out of mercy because the child was starving. In any case, she's lost her mind now. But the fact that this could be such a common problem in Goethe's day, and in really the whole Romantic period, you can see this issue show up again and again in Romantic literature. Look at Les Miserables with Fantine. What happens to her? In The Scarlet Letter, at least Hester is still given an occupation, even though she's an outcast of society. But Faust is really, really mad, not just that Gretchen's in trouble, but that Mephistopheles kept it hidden from him. Remember how Mephistopheles was distracting him last night and keeping him away from the vision of Gretchen? Now that Faust realizes what's been going on, he's angry. In misery, despairing, long roaming the earth, a wretched waif, and now imprisoned? Locked up in the dungeon as an evildoer to suffer appalling torture, the lovely, luckless creature, to this pass! Faithless, degraded spirit, and this you concealed from me! Yes, stand there, stand. Roll those demon eyes in your head in speechless spite. Stand there and defy me with your unbearable presence. Imprisoned in unredeemable ruin, abandoned to evil spirits and to judging, unfeeling mankind. And through it all you lulled me with insipid distractions. Hide from me her deepening wretchedness and let her helplessly perish. Faust is really, really angry. And in this scene, Mephistopheles shows himself as particularly evil. Now, we've always known that Mephistopheles was the devil. We've always known that Mephistopheles was out for Faust's soul, but here, more than ever, he shows his dark side. We're often distracted by the fact that Mephistopheles is really comical, and that he tends to play and joke around. But here, we see him as cold as he can possibly get. His only response to Faust's despair over Gretchen's doom is, she's not the first. It happens all the time. Who cares? And Faust just gets more angry at this. And Mephistopheles says, psh, you wanted to fly with me. You gotta be able to take it. And no matter how much Faust rants and raves, Mephistopheles is not even fazed. After his long spiel, Mephistopheles just says, are you finished? And finally, Faust demands that Mephistopheles help him save Gretchen. And Mephistopheles says, I cannot loose the Avenger's bonds nor undo his bolts. Save her. Who was it that plunged her to ruin? I or you? Really rubbing in the fact that Faust is the one who got her into this in the first place. Finally, Mephistopheles agrees to help Faust save her, although Mephistopheles has no power over her bonds. Remember back in the night scene when he talks about how people who've been accused of murder, everything is done in the Lord's name, and so Mephistopheles has no power over their imprisonment. That's why he couldn't have saved Faust if Faust had been caught. But he does say that he'll take Faust there and put the jailer to sleep allowing Faust to get the keys and set Gretchen free himself. Faust is human, so he's not bound by the same rules that Mephistopheles is. But Faust is walking into a kind of trouble here too, because this is the same place where he committed a murder a year ago, and therefore he could get in just as much trouble. But Faust is willing to take the risk. He has to save his Gretchen. And so they get on these magic horses and they fly away. The next scene is very short and just sort of sets a bit of mood to all of this. Night, open field. Faust and Mephistopheles are riding on their magic flying horses, and they ride past the Ravenstone, which is the place where Gretchen is going to be beheaded in the morning. And over the Ravenstone, there are all these witches who are going, doing scary witch things. And Faust is sort of just absorbed in this, but it's just setting the tone. Something big is going to happen here. Gretchen is about to be killed, and it's all ooky spooky. And so we get to the final scene, the really dramatic conclusion of part one, the dungeon scene. The scene opens with Faust approaching the door with the keys in his hand. He's rushed all this way to save Gretchen. He's ready to be a hero. He gets the key and he puts it in the lock, and then he goes, this is going to be really awkward, isn't it? He's actually afraid of facing Gretchen after all he's done to her and then abandoning her for a year. But he can't wait any longer because this is his only chance to save her, so he goes inside. And inside, Gretchen is singing a song. My mother the whore who smothered me, my father the knave who made broth of me, wee sister shy, the bones laid by in a cool dale. Of a sudden I was a fair nightingale. Fly, pretty bird, fly. This song that she's singing actually comes from a German fairy tale called the Juniper Tree. And it is a very interesting fairy tale to examine in the context of this scene. If you'd like to see my reading of the Juniper Tree, acting it out with puppets, fruit puppets, you can click up here and watch it. In short, the story is about an evil stepmother who kills her son, her stepson, and then blames it all on her own daughter. And in order to cover up the crime, she cooks up the stepson into a pudding and feeds it to her husband, the boy's father. And so the father actually eats the son, and the mother is hiding all of this, and the little girl is the only one who expresses sympathy for the little boy, and so she buries his bones under this juniper tree, and then this bird appears, and the bird seems to be sort of the spirit of the sun. And so we have this reflection in this particular song. But notice how Gretchen puts herself in the place of the villain. She has all of this guilt and all the weight of all of these horrible feelings she's had with all of this circumstance, and now she's placed herself in this story as the villainous stepmother. The murdering stepmother who's killed her own child. The one who cooks her own child into a broth and feeds it to the father. So Faust takes the place of the aloof father who really doesn't know what's going on. He's just completely oblivious. But Gretchen sees herself very darkly here. Faust comes in and steps into the room and is ready to rescue Gretchen, but she doesn't recognize him. She's actually no longer sane. And it's important to note that the Romantics really like madness. They think that insanity is really cool. Because after all, it's the perfect romantic situation. You're as far from reason as you can get. You're completely driven by emotions. You're driven by supernatural. After all, those who are insane no longer seem to really follow the rules of nature, but they seem to do things that are beyond the rules of nature. They're hearing voices that are not there and things like that. And so often in romantic literature, you'll have a character who goes mad, but the mad character will in some ways reveal a kind of truth that is deeper than the characters who are tainted by reason. And here we'll see that same thing. Gretchen, in her madness, is able to see things more clearly than she ever could when she was sane. The first thing that happens is that she does not recognize Faust, but sees him as the jailer or the executioner who's come to take her to her execution. And we might hear echoes of the fact that this is Faust who is destroying her, Faust who is killing her. And when he kneels in the straw to try to beg her to come with him and to try to unlock her bonds, she believes that they're praying one final time before she goes to her execution. And she also hears the devils yelling and howling beneath the floor, coming for her. It's not until Faust actually calls her name, Gretchen, Gretchen, that she wakes up and recognizes him. That was my dear one calling. Where is he? I heard him well, he called me. I am free. There's nobody shall hold me. To his arms I shall fly, at his bosom lie. He called Gretchen. On the threshold he stood, through the clangor and howl of the devil's brood, through the sneers, the infernal infuriate drone. I knew it, the sweet, the enchanting tone. And when she recognizes him, her chains actually fall off, and she's being freed by her love for him. But let's examine this farther. When Faust says, "It is I," and she says, "It's you, oh say it again. It's he, it is he. Where is all my pain, the chains, the dungeon where I languish? You have come to end my anguish. I am saved. Already I see the street anew, where first you came up into my sight, the dear garden bright where I and Marta were awaiting you." She feels like Faust can save her. But can he? At this point, Faust begins to try to pull her out and say, "Come on, we gotta get out of here, we gotta escape." And she won't leave. And as he keeps trying to get her to leave, she keeps lingering and she tries to kiss him. He doesn't want to kiss her because he wants to get her out of there. And so she notices this. And as she kisses him, she feels him not kissing her back, and it changes. "My friend, so lately gone amiss and has forgotten how to kiss? Why am I fearful now in your embrace?" And then a little farther, "Oh no, your lips are cold, are clay. Where is your love abiding? In hiding? Who took it away?" And so this man who she always believed loved her so much, when she runs to him and kisses him, she realizes that his love is not true. And she no longer feels his love. Therefore, can his love save her? And so instead of going with him, then all of a sudden she begins to return to her guilt. "My mother I killed, my child I drowned. Was it not given us both and bound thee to thee? No, I can't believe it yet. Give me that hand. No, it's no dream. My dearest hand. But it feels wet. Oh, wipe it off. It would seem that there's blood on it. Oh, God, whom did it hit? Put up that sword, I beg thee." She cannot let go of her guilt. So even though her chains have fallen off, it's only the physical chains. She could physically escape, but she can never escape from her guilt. She's bound by something much stronger than Faust has the power to overcome. And then she sort of seems to give in to her guilt and goes through the way she wants them all to be buried, and how she is going to be buried all alone outside the graveyard with her child. But Faust keeps trying to insist that she come out, come out, come out. And she says, "Out where?" And Faust says, "To freedom." And she says, "Is the grave out there, death ambushed? Then I go with you, from here to the eternal resting place, else not one pace. You're leaving now? Oh, Heinrich, if I could too." She knows that her only escape is in death. And as she sees that Faust wants to leave, she says, "Oh, if only I could go with you." And Faust says, "You can! Just do it! Just come with me!" But she knows there's no escape. Then all of a sudden she returns again to her guilt, and this time feels as though she's reliving the death of her family members, starting with her own child. "Quick, run! Save your little one! Quick, follow the trail up the river dale, cross on the trunk to the copse. Left where the planking stops into the lake. Snatch it, for God's sake! It hasn't sunk, it's kicking still! Save it! Save!" And Faust replies, "Oh, love, you rave. One step and you can leave at will." She's reliving the death of her own child and begging Faust to save her child, their child. And Faust, throughout this whole scene, really doesn't even recognize the child. He doesn't respond to her talk of the child. He just keeps trying to pull her out, as if the whole child thing really didn't even, he's trying to ignore it almost. But then as he continues to try to draw her out, Gretchen relives the death of her mother. "If only we were past that hill, there sits my mother upon a stone. It sets my flesh a shiver. There sits my mother upon a stone, her heavy head a quiver. She won't beckon or nod, her head is too sore. She slept so long she'll awake no more. She slept so that we might kiss. Those were the days of our bliss." And she sees again her mother who won't wake because she's been drugged to the point of death. Finally, Faust is just about to give up, and he says, "Fine, if you won't come with me, I'll just drag you out by force." And Gretchen replies, "Let go, I'll suffer no violence. Don't seize me with such murderous grasp. Haven't I done all else you've asked?" What a powerful statement. Do you remember a little bit ago in Marta's garden when Faust had asked her so much? She had already given up her body. She already gave up everything. She even was willing to drug her own mother for Faust. And we said, what is the stopping point? What's the point that she will say no to? And we finally found it. She says, "Haven't I done all else you asked? I will not go with you." Because Gretchen knows there is no escape with Faust. all she can do is continue in her guilt. And so she chooses to stay. There's a freedom that she takes in bondage, a freedom from Faust. She may not be free from her dungeon, but she chooses to be free from Faust. And Faust sees that his time is really up, the dawn is coming, and he says, "The dawn shines gray, oh love, my love." And Gretchen says, "Day, yes, day is here, it dawns so gray. This was to be my wedding day. Tell no one that Gretchen was yours already. My poor wreath's shredding, what's done is done. We shall be one, but not at a wedding." The crowd is thronging, no word, no laugh. The square is milling, the streets are filling. There tolls the bell, they break the staff. How they pounce on me, bind me. Already I am on the scaffold laid. All necks shrink back from the winking blade that will glint and find me. Mute lies the world like the grave. She says that today is her wedding day, although there was never really seemed to be any intent in Faust's mind to marry her. But she sees that day of unity where the two will come together and be together forever. But then the image blends into her execution day. And she sees that she's unified with Faust, not through love and marriage, but through doom and damnation. And in that moment, Mephistopheles bursts in and says, "We gotta go now. The horses, the magical horses, only work at night. They're about to disappear. We've got to go." But Gretchen, upon seeing Mephistopheles again, realizes who he truly is. Now, she's always seen him as a really creepy guy, but now that she's insane, she actually can see that he's the devil. And she says, "No, he's coming for me, he's coming for me. What rises there from the pit ascending? He, send him away. What does he want on this solemn day? He wants me." And as Faust says, "No, you'll be fine, come with us," Gretchen says, "Judgment of God, to thee I give my soul." Instead of going with Faust, she turns away from him and turns to heaven. Mephistopheles says, "You gotta go now, there's no more time," and he grabs Faust. But Gretchen won't go with him. She turns and kneels and says, "Thine I am, Father, rescue me, ye heavenly hosts of angels, sally, to be my refuge, about me rally. Heinrich, I shrink from thee." And Mephistopheles says, "She's condemned, she's doomed, it's too late." But just as he says this voice comes down from heaven and says, "Redeemed." And the scene closes with darkness dropping, and Mephistopheles is dragging Faust away into the dark, saying, "Come on, let's go!" And Gretchen is calling after him, "Heinrich, Heinrich!" And so Gretchen ascends to heaven. She dies and goes to heaven, yay! And Faust is dragged off into the darkness by the devil. The trajectories of the two are very obviously in opposite directions. And so we come to the end of part one, which is a pretty satisfying conclusion in my book. It feels like a good ending, but the second half of Faust is still to come. And my goodness, the second half is weird. Most of the time people really pay the most attention to part one. They really focus on the details of part one, and then usually skip most of part two to the very end to find out what happens to Faust at the end of his life. So in our next episode, I'm going to sum up the general action of part two and then look at the end of part two. The Disney song for this particular section is "Let It Go." It's funny how some madness helps my vision start to clear, and the feelings that once controlled me now don't seem that sincere. It's time to turn away from you, to turn my heart to something true, and as you're dragged away from me, I'm free. Let him go, I am turning towards heaven's light. Let him go, as he's dragged into the night. Here I stand in the light of day. Faust, you can't save me, but death's not the end for me anyway. Thanks for watching. You can click up here to watch the previous episode, or click here to watch the last episode, and click down here to subscribe. I'll see you next time when we look at the part two of Faust and talk about the very ending of the play.